All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Pirates Podcast to be named later. I am your host, Eddie Provident. With me is the one and only Alex Stumpf, who is freshly back from PNC Park on Friday night. I guess right now it's Saturday morning, Alex, off of a 14-7 fireworks night, Pride night. Pirates taking care of business. Rich Hill taking the hill. Looking very good today. But bad news, unfortunate news for the Pittsburgh Pirates with Vince Velasquez. What do you got for us, man?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the day if you ever needed a 119 pitch outing from one of your starting pitchers. Rich Hill picked a good day for it. Pirates were dealt a blow that they were hoping that they were going to be able to avoid, but the longer it went, the more it kind of looked like it was an inevitability. Vince Velasquez had surgery on the UCL. It's not a full-blown Tommy John surgery, but he is going to be out 11 to 12 months for baseball activities. His season is done. Now, whenever you consider that JT Brubaker is out for the year because of Tommy John, and Mike Burrows is out for the year because of Tommy John, that really means there's not a whole lot of depth to go from. And Roansy Contreras, we don't know what his future is, at the moment. They were ready to move him into the bullpen whenever they thought they were getting Velasquez back in the rotation. He's not pitched well of late. That was a very rough May. He got absolutely shelled his last time out. There's not a whole lot out. And basically, the Pirates are kind of in a spot where you got Quinn Priester, who has pitched very well, for a month plus in Indianapolis. And he's a good prospect, one of their top prospects, someone that they have to fall back on. But outside of that, this team doesn't have many starting options left. And that's even assuming that you could get a full year's worth of innings out of someone like Contreras or Ortiz, or even Priester for that matter.
Right. Yeah, man, it's a tough spot to be in. I would say, right now, where we sit right now, Friday night and Saturday morning, the Pirates are just a scotch, a hair in first place on their own in the Central. Is the trade market a viable option?
Not at this time.
Not at this
time. Not in early June, because everyone's looking for pitching at this time of year. Teams don't know if they're selling. This is going to be a seller's market, it looks like, because there's the expanded playoffs. The central divisions of both the American League and National League are pretty wide open, that anyone could, like even a team like the Reds, who are earlier in their rebuild than the Pirates, are only a handful of games behind the Pirates. Now, I don't think the Reds are going to be able to keep this up. And, they don't have a whole lot of pitching to, trade at this moment anyway. But just them as an example, these are wide open divisions, and there aren't a lot of commodities out there. And I think the real question is, if this team is still in that mix for the division, in spot for a wild card this time next month, or after the All-Star break even, how seriously should you go after one of these guys? How quality of a prospect can you give up? Because I look at their other options in Indianapolis, and it's pretty much like Osvaldo Bido, who isn't, he's an up-down guy at best. Caleb Smith, that's not really an option. You got Max Kranick, potentially in September, but that's also September. So you got to find a way to bridge that gap. There aren't a whole lot of starting options left, and I don't know how they can do it and be a competitive club without going to the trade market, and it's just not an option right now.
So let's refocus then, stay on the rotation, but let's talk about Rich Hill on Friday night and that 119 pitch outing, 7 innings pitched, looked good, man. Looked solid as he's been all season. How important now is it for Mitch Keller and Rich Hill to really kind of batten down the hatches, no pun intended, with the Pirates? But how important is it now for guys like him to really come in and give you that solid, 5, 6, 7 innings, every fifth day? Because now it really is an unknown for the pitching staff.
Yeah, It's vital right now because I want to go even one step further with the 5-6-7. Like coming into this year, I thought this team had some good middle relief options. Will Crow is hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Chase DeYoung is not cutting it, and he was DFA'd for the second time on Friday. Dwayne Underwood Jr. DFA'd. So whenever you say 5-6-7, it almost feels like a 6-7, yeah, type of deal. Because even though there are some guys like Jose Hernandez has been, a very pleasant surprise. Johan Ramirez has been a very pleasant surprise. Like you can't keep trotting out the same 4 or 5 guys. There has to be some other steps in there, some other guys you could go to for those semi-leverage innings or before we get to the back end of the bullpen. So it's to answer the question, it's vital.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot riding right now for whatever the Pirates playoff hopes are. There is a lot riding on the left arm of the 43-year-old Rich Hill, who has not pitched, 150, 160 innings, that often in his career. I believe only twice in his career. And boy, do they really need him to do it a third time at age 43. Like, they really need those innings. Mitch Keller, they need him to right the ship. And look, most important of them all, I think, is Rowanzi.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what his inning limit is this year. He had the big jump last year. His fastball velocity hasn't been. There are so many things about that fastball that are just not right now. It's not as fast as it needs to be. It's not tunneling the way it should be. It's not having the right paths to the plate. It's coming in flat. It's just everything that could go wrong with the pitch is going wrong with the pitch. And that's why he's not a major league starter. And the Pirates cannot afford to lose a young, talented starter for something like this. It's not to excuse injuries, but injuries happen in this sport. And not to say, well, what can you do? But right now, if you're the Pirates, what can you do other than make sure that Brubaker, Burrows, those guys rehab properly so that whenever they come back next year, they're fully ready to go. You got to find a way to get through 2023 first, and they don't have a lot of options to pull from anymore.
The last question I have for you as far as the rotation goes, because it's one name that hasn't been brought up in this entire conversation, is Johan Oviedo.
Yeah.
For me, he is, I understand, the Rich Hill conversation. I understand. Obviously, we all know Mitch Keller needs to be the horse on this, of this rotation.
No question.
The guy for me, though, the wild card is Johan Oviedo. Because if we get Johan Oviedo that we saw in April, then this pitching staff is going to be okay. But again, it's another young unknown. He's the wild card for me. He's the guy that I think he's a big body. He's built for it, and he has the stuff. It's just a little inconsistent. If Johan Oviedo can somehow put together a solid month of June, I think that drastically changes this conversation of what the Pirates rotation can be, what it would look like. Do they go to the trade market? All of these questions change if Johan Oviedo can be what he is built to be and what we saw him be, a month and a half ago.
Yeah, and Oviedo is, the big wild card here. I'll agree with that because we have seen times where he was one of the best pitchers in the National League. There was a stretch of 2 or 3 weeks there where he was.
Was it against the White Sox where he just looked unhittable? I mean, he just.
I go back to the Cardinals and
Cardinals.
I know,
it was the Cardinals game. Yep, that was the one I'm thinking of. The Cardinals game. He just looked unhittable, man.
He wanted that one, and he pitched his butt off in that one, and he took a loss, and you could tell afterwards that ate him up. It's like, dude, you might have pitched the best game you've ever had in your life, and you could tell he wanted to show his former team what they're missing out on. But
before we
he is the big guy here to wrap up what you're saying. You need someone, him, Rowanzi, Luis Ortiz taking that next step. You need to find
someone needs to.
Yes, because the options are limited. And if you could get to the trade deadline in that playoff mix, things can change. They're not going to give up, a Henry Davis, an Andy Rodriguez to make a trade, a top prospect, but J.A. Happ was a small, a minor trade that worked out perfectly. You can find guys. They found the Tyler Andersons. They found Velazquez, Quintana. They could find someone else out there. But They got to get to that point somehow.
Right? Yeah, I think the point is right now they're not looking to find an ace; they're looking to round out a rotation.
They're looking for depth because
Yeah,
it's just been
exactly.
obliterated.
Real quick before, because you did touch on this at the beginning, before we go to a quick break, Tony has a question from Facebook. Will we see Quinn Priester now called up? You alluded to that we probably will see him this season. When do you think Priester is in the mix?
I have to wonder if it's sooner rather than later. Like Tony, I wish I could say, like, oh, he's gonna make 2 starts more in Indianapolis, and then he's coming up. We don't know yet. We don't know yet for sure what Roansy Contreras' future with this club is. There's going to be a stretch of 17 games in 18 days coming up in the near future. That would seem like a potential landing spot for at least a Quinn Priester spot start. Just to give everyone that extra day, that extra blow, but.
Would it be a situation, Alex, and I may be way out of my depth here, but with it being a rotation that right now is going to have Mitch Keller and Rich Hill as the 2 veterans, and then you have 3 unproven young guys. Would it be a situation where maybe you go to a 6-man rotation or look at maybe not starting Priester every 5th day, but kind of spot starting him just to give Rich Hill's arm, like you said, he's only done it twice in his career, 150 innings, just kind of using Priester as like or do you think that once they get him up here, they want to get him in the rotation and they want to get him used to that major league schedule?
I think that would be the preference out of the 2. I think that's fair to say. I think we're going to see stretches where there will be a 6-man rotation for this team. I don't see it being like a regular, like for a month, it's just going to be once every 6 days. But like I said, during that stretch of 17 games in 18 days, that could be, a real possibility of just like everyone get a blow in there, like one extra day to, either focus on the bullpen or prep for what's going to happen. I think that's a distinct possibility, if not Priester, just someone. They've got roster spots at the moment. To work with. I believe the roster is at 37, and even whenever you consider Davis is going to get one of those and Priester is going to get one of those, you have a little flexibility to work with. So
let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk some more Buccos baseball. All right, Alex, I have a question for you. I want to get away from pitching for a second. And I want to talk about 2 players whose bats have really shown to be vital over the last couple games, maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks. Ke'Bryan Hayes and Ji-hwan Bae are the 2 that I am focusing on right now. Ji-hwan Bae, the thing I tweeted, this is why you keep Ji-hwan Bae in the lineup Friday when he lays that bunt down. His speed causes the error on the throw. He gets to third base, clears the bases on a bunt, and then the thing that I think got overlooked in that inning was the very next at bat, the very next batter in that inning. The infield is in now. Everybody's in because of Ji-hwan Bae's speed, and a routine ground ball becomes a single, and Ji-hwan Bae scores, and it's all because of the speed. I think they put on the big screen that in his last 14 games coming into Friday, he was batting .367. This is the Ji-hwan Bae that the Pirates need. And then Ke'Bryan Hayes Friday, man, he had a career game, man. Like he absolutely, if this is, I don't think this is sustained, like a night like Friday is going to be the norm. But if we could see the Ke'Bryan Hayes that we've seen over the last couple weeks, going back to one of our earlier questions, conversations preseason, Alex, we're seeing a different type of third baseman out of Ke'Bryan Hayes. What do you think about those 2 guys?
Well, I'm just going to touch on Bae real fast here because I got a lot more to say about Hayes. But for Bae in particular, I think the big thing is just how he's moving his body.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, like he used to coil up whenever he would swing, and it didn't work out.
Right.
He would coil up just so he'd have to uncoil, and there's just a lot of movement there. There's a lot of ways for the body to go wrong. He's doing it a lot simpler right now. It's working out great. This is kind of what G1 Bay should be doing at the plate. Just get the bat to the ball, and like you said, let the speed play. Just try to make something happen that way. Hayes, look, even I was hearing about what Hayes was doing, experimenting with, what he was getting close to, even before that West Coast trip.
Okay.
And it was that Mariners series that might have been like the bottoming out point where Hayes is like, I don't like what I'm doing. I'm frustrated. And he has that off day against the Giants, and he really works and he implements the toe tap, and that's great. that's great and everything. But it was even before then that the work that he and Andy Haynes started to do was starting to really take. And it was starting to really show that these two can work and collaborate and be this better ball player. And not to say, Hayes isn't collaborative or, a tough guy to coach or anything, because that's not true. It's just sometimes these relationships take more than the year. And that's kind of why I never called for, Hayes to be fired last year. It was, let's give this guy the extra year. He was dealt a very bad hand because of everything that came with the lockout and everything. Like, let's see what we could do in the second year. And I think Hayes is the golden example of why you need that second year for an offensive coordinator to actually go through. I think the approach has been much better. I think the results speak for themselves. I mean, we have a guy who had an OPS barely above 600 a week and a half ago, and now it's basically at a major league average.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not to say that, you want major league average, but Hayes as an average hitter with that defense he's an impact player.
That's what we said. Yeah, that was the whole conversation preseason, between the two of us is, what does his offense need to be for him to be the number one third baseman in the NL? And for me, it's average to above average, and he's that guy.
If his OPS starts with an 8, he's probably the best third baseman in baseball.
I would agree 100% with you there. Yeah, man, it's exciting to see the bats come alive like that. I mean, obviously, it's one game. It's 14 runs against the Mets. But, I mean, Tony, again, brought up Jack Sawinski. Sawinski looked really good again. We got to see a home run from Santana. McCutchen gets a base hit where he kind of gets the gap between third and short and, runs one out. He's one hit away from 2,000. Everybody in the lineup on Friday night did something impactful. It felt like, there really wasn't any holes in that lineup. And these are the games, again, I'm not saying that the Pirates are going to score 14 runs every game, but these are the types of games that I think keep this young team that needs that confidence. These are the types of games that build that for them. And these are the types of games that show them, hey, it doesn't matter if we're going up against the A's or if we're going up against the Mets with a, multi-$100 million roster. We can play with anybody in baseball. They just need that confidence, and they need to find that just that everyday grind almost, but it was a fun night at the ballpark for sure.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they needed that after that A's series. They responded well. I know the Mets are reeling right now, but these are whatever you take advantage of those, because especially since there isn't a game 163, and I am looking way too far in the future right now. But if you could take a series like this or two, if they could sweep the Mets, that would go a long way for like tiebreakers as far as, for that, last wild card, if it comes down to that. Again, I'm looking way too far in advance with all this, but whatever it comes to Hayes, maybe I'm over exaggerating a little bit with, if the OPS starts with 8, he's the best third baseman in baseball, because there is still like Jose Ramirez. There still is, like a lot of great players at that position. It's one of the most stacked positions in the sport, but he definitely is among the very best if he can do that. And what he is doing at the plate right now, he has never swung the bat like this before. and I include September 2020, like just what he's done these last 8 games. Like this isn't, reminiscent of what he did that first month. It's like the approach, the actual results. It's not just, it'd be one thing if he's shooting ground balls to the right, to right field or whatever, but like every hit was in the air on Friday. Like, my goodness, could you imagine saying that a year ago with this guy?
No, not at all.
He's driving line drives to all parts of the field. He's getting flares. He's doing everything that you should be doing as a hitter. I get people who are tired of me talking about exit velocities and expected stats for him, but like, this is what it always could have been if he could consistently lift the ball, and he's done that for a week plus now, and that's why the results are speaking for themselves.
And it might be baby steps, but that's how you get started sometimes, is the baby steps. And
I think we're beyond baby steps.
Well, right, no, I mean, baby steps in the sense that it's only been a week, like that, like it's obvious. I think anybody that hates on Hayes is going to say, well, we want to see more of it. And I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
1 week is 1 week, but it's steps in the right direction for him. And that's a huge thing for this baseball team.
I think the baby steps are what he and Haynes started to do before, in mid-May, like even before that Seattle series. And like, we'll point to Seattle as like kind of like the bottoming out point, and maybe what was the catalyst for the toe tap. And, I can just say, no, that wasn't what got this started. It was before then. Like, those two have been in the lab for a while, and now we're seeing the results.
This is why we have you on the show, Alex. That little inside flair,
Not just a pretty face.
Let's take one more quick break. When we come back, I have a question for you about one of the players on the roster. All right, Alex, we are potentially going to see history this weekend with Andrew McCutchen hitting his one hit away from 2,000. Hopefully Saturday or Sunday at home it happens. And I know we don't have a lot of time on this last segment, and we talked about legacy last week. I want your favorite Andrew McCutchen story as a fan before you started covering the team when he was here last time, or at this season. What is your favorite? Could be funny, could be serious, anything, but what is your favorite Andrew McCutchen story?
Man, I got so many good ones whenever I talk to him for that long form piece. Like, it in depth. Read that one. I'm really proud of that one. Go check out the site. Kutch and I talked about some of his most iconic hits. Some really great ones. Like, whatever he's talking about, like he's mimicking the Air Jordan logo because of the conversation he and Lastings Village had. I'm like, oh my God, you have to be a true pirate sicko to get all of this. Like, this is great right here. I use the line favorite moment while like scrolling through the videos, like, like, hey, this is one of my favorites. I don't know if I should have done that for the inside the Parker, just for how goofy that play was. And you could see, he says, like, look, you see me rounding third. I'm at full power. I'm doing everything I can right now. And we're fortunate enough that the clip has it just for a moment of like, you could see his eyes at like full speed running as hard as he can, rounding third base in an absolute dead sprint for his life. Like that's one of my favorite ones. And I mean, the Cardinals walk-off is obviously iconic. The first walk-off home run, like, as Tony says here, like the home run against the first place Cardinals, that was, that was a moment in itself. But to actually answer the question, my favorite, doing the actual interview might have been like my favorite Kutch moment from this year, but like, watching him as a player, I think that inside the Parker was just something special. I couldn't not talk about that one. Yeah.
There's so many with him, man. And like when I look back on those playoff runs, for me, it's funny. I can't pinpoint one specific story or one specific time or play or anything like that. for me, it's what he meant to the franchise, and then getting to see playoff baseball with my dad for the first time. That will always be Andrew McCutchen's legacy. And my favorite thing about Andrew McCutchen is he was the guy on this baseball team that got them over the hump. And I got to experience playoff baseball, and I got to experience it with my pops. And that will always be, for me, that's Andrew McCutchen in a nutshell right there. We're lucky, I think, as a city and a fan base, we're lucky to have a guy like that back on the team. I think everybody that's met him or had the opportunity to sit down and talk with him could tell you how great of a guy he is, how great of a player he is, how great of a mentor now as one of the vets in that in the locker room and at the ballpark, in the clubhouse. Savor this. Maybe he may not. Yeah, maybe he's not on the Sidney Crosby, Ben Roethlisberger level as far as elite in the game that he plays. But savor this 2,000 hit thing, because it doesn't come around often. It's one of those milestones that really, at least in the Pirates organization and the Pirates history, that in this franchise, it sets him apart and kind of puts him in a different place. So all I can say is just savor it, enjoy it. We have a good one here, and it's going to be a fun time, man. I've enjoyed this season so much.
Yeah.
You got anything else for the listeners, man?
Go read the in-depth story. Those are tough to write, and it's
go
always,
read it.
It's personally fulfilling, but I need those sweet page clicks too. So.
Give Alex some love. Go listen. Yeah, listen to this all the time. Listen to all the other podcasts, but go read Alex's work. Not just the long form stuff. Not just he does his day-to-day stuff is top notch. I'd put him against anyone in the city. That's why I hang out with him every Friday night, because I learn a thing or two about baseball from this guy. So it's been fun. Do this again next week.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Well, for Alex Stumpf, for DK Pittsburgh Sports, this is the Pirates Podcast We Name Later. We will catch you all next week.